Today, I'm going to be doing a video I've had my heart set on for a while, and that is we're going to be doing an L Word Iceberg video. And if you don't know what an iceberg video is, it's basically where you take a movie or TV show and you go through these different layers. You start off on the top layer, which is, the top layer of the iceberg that's above the water, with very much, surface level stuff about the show or movie that pretty much anybody who watches the show would know. And as you move down the layers of the iceberg, you go into more unknown topics and just things that maybe your average audience member wouldn't know about the show. And you end up in the very depths, the very deep water, with stuff that not a lot of people know about the show or movie. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be going over 5 levels of this L Word iceberg. And I hope that there's some new information in there for you. And if there's anything that I don't cover that you think is interesting or that people might not know, let us know in the comments. So let's get right into it. And we're going to be starting off with level 1. That's pretty much, the things that most people know about the L Word and very general stuff. And our first one is starting off right at the beginning of the show, and that was whenever Jennifer Beals was cast in the show, there was actually a lot of worry in the mainstream media that her playing a lesbian would mean that she might not be able to work again. And I think that now that, we're in a different world LGBTQ wise than we were in 2003 when they cast the show, there was a lot of discussion about their careers just not being able to bounce back from this. And if you go back and look at a lot of the media and promotions that Jennifer Beals was doing in the first season, there is this really, I wouldn't even say subtle, it's just blatant homophobia. And I really give props to Jennifer Beals because she doesn't just smile and nod and gloss over it. She does correct them, and she's always, very polite and never, rude or anything, but she certainly doesn't let people walk all over her.
So we're on when the kids might be in here. I want to tell you, now's the time to tell the little guys to go in there and get a snack, because you might not want them to see the clip that we're about to show. I'm going to roll the clip, and then we'll just talk about what it's like to be a part of this kind of scene, which is a typical love scene with maybe an atypical couple. Okay, ready? Whoa. What's your husband say about scenes like that?
You know what's so interesting is that, to me, if that were a heterosexual love scene, you wouldn't have to say to the audience, send the children in for a snack. I mean, I don't think that you would, or would you?
Well, I think it depends on what the nature of the involvement is.
Right.
And I think, yeah, at least I would. But, you're talking to a mom with 3 kids.
So when you have people on and they have a love scene and you show the clip, you don't warn them?
You know what? We probably wouldn't use that clip, because a kiss like that between a man and a woman
is no big deal.
It's no big deal. We've seen it a lot.
Right.
And I think that's really the big difference. Not everybody has seen a kiss like that.
Right. It's interesting. Because at the end of the day, it's about love and how you show love.
And I really respect her for taking on this role, and not only taking it on, but becoming one of the most popular, revered lesbian characters the world over, because I know there's some people who are always not going to like a character, but for the most part, most people love Bette Porter. Next up is that when the show was actually in this casting stage and beginning, the show was not originally called the L Word. It was called Earthlings, which was a slang term for lesbians in the early 2000s. And also the makeup of the show was a little bit different, because Kit wasn't actually Bette's sister or even a character, but Pam Grier was playing another character called the Captain, and the Captain actually had the chart tattooed on their back, so it was a very different kind of vibe with that character too. And Alice was actually created because they enjoyed Leisha Haley so much, and wanted to introduce her to the show. So whenever they rearranged things and they made Kit Bette's sister, they then reassigned the chart to Leisha Haley's character, Alice. And speaking of Alice, we're going to move on to our final point on this level 1. Alice actually was going to have her own spin-off. And I'm sure a lot of people know this, especially anyone who watched the original show. But the entire final season with the murder mystery, which we'll talk about a lot more in a minute, but Alice was being set up to take the fall for this. And she wasn't necessarily going to be the one who killed Jenny, but even before the final season finished airing, everybody knew that watched the show that Alice was going to go to prison for this murder. So it kind of spoiled the entire final season, but we also didn't know at the time that we weren't going to find out who actually killed Jenny. So Alice was going to go into this prison that had these different wings, and she was going to go into the wing that was called the farm, and there was other wings like the jungle. And in this series there was going to also be Laurie Metcalf starring in it, so there was some big names attached to it, but it never got picked up by Showtime. They did have a pilot made, and I remember seeing it like all the way back in 2009, and I may have some crazy copy somewhere on an old hard drive, so I'm gonna have to dig it up, but it didn't go anywhere, unfortunately, and that pilot was all that was ever made of The Farm. So moving into our second level, we're getting a little bit deeper now, and sticking with our theme of the final season, we also have the interrogation tapes. So again, most people who watch the show live will probably remember this, but when season 6 was airing, every week they would direct people to the Showtime website, and this was actually after they had another website called Our Chart, which I'll also talk about more in a minute. But the Showtime website would post a video every single week of one of the characters having another scene with Lucy Lawless's character, and it was their interrogation. These tapes were of Bette, Alice, Tina, Shane, Helena, Max, and Nikki, and they were just bad news. I don't understand why they wouldn't have basically any character development over the past 6 seasons, and then they put some terrible character development in deleted scenes.
So, when did you meet Miss Porter?
This woman called me, very professional, like, hi, I'm Bette Porter at the Drawing Center in Manhattan. And I was like, what center? What are you drawing? Blood? And she said, I heard that you could help me develop my list.
Do you think you're arrogant? I think I'm lucky to be with someone who can tolerate a lot more than my mother did. Do you think I'm arrogant? Mm-mm. So you have this relationship, you say it's not perfect. I don't think that there's any such thing as a perfect relationship. I think you find the person who tolerates you the best, who maybe moves you to reach beyond yourself sometimes, who sees you more truly than anyone has ever seen you. And when she fails to see you, then you just take a deep breath and you remind yourself not to expect perfection.
So of all of them, who were you closest to?
Alice. Without a doubt, Alice. And also, I've known her the longest as well.
But also, they were not shy about putting character development in scenes and then deleting them. I mean, here's an example of one little Bette scene that was cut that had a little bit of info in it.
Bette. Bette.
Do you know Douglas Chubby? This is Bette Porter, our new dean.
Very nice meeting.
Likewise. Doug just underwrote the new Earth Sciences facility.
I am very well aware of the Chibby Center. I used to be a big Sixers fan. I grew up in Philadelphia.
A Philly girl. Well, that'll stand you in good stead when you come to him begging for money to fund the new digital lab. I'll send you some passes the next time they play here in town.
Thank you.
When was the last time you came to a game?
Oh, it was my father's birthday. I think it was 96.
So, you've met my newest star. Isn't she fantastic? Bette, can I borrow you for a moment?
Excuse me, very nice to meet you.
So basically, these interrogation tapes went down terribly. People were furious about the 6th season in general because it was so terrible. And again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. But these interrogation tapes just further fanned the flames. And things like, especially Tina's one, just the question is why. If you haven't seen the interrogation tapes, I will link them in the description box below, but proceed with caution. You may want to stay in the ignorance is bliss category because you can unsee these.
And why is Kelly not a threat?
My mom died when I graduated from college, and she used to say that the only true intimacy between two people is when you read poetry. And so the only true act of betrayal is when you share poetry with someone other than your beloved.
Poetry? You buy that?
Well, it's true. My father, he had an affair with this pretty young law student who clerked for him at his first job, and my mother was never threatened.
So you wouldn't mind if Bette had an affair with this Kelly?
I'm not saying that. I'm not my mother.
Our next point is Tina actually was supposed to die instead of Dana. And at the end of season 2, they did consider killing off Tina, which I think that obviously would have been a huge mistake. And thankfully, they didn't end up doing that. And our final point for this level kind of links into that because also Tina and Bette were never supposed to get back together after season 1. They were supposed to break up and be done. And it was only because of the fan reaction that they considered getting them back together. Next up is level 3, getting a bit more down into the murky water. And this point is going a bit more into the whole philosophy of the show. And that is that the characters of Jenny and Bette were really the first points of creation of the show.
Look, Bette and Jenny were my first 2 characters. I knew that they were going to be central to the plot and to the ensemble. One way to get into this show would be through a character who started out straight and came to understand that she was gay. And that, of course, is Jenny.
Because when Ilene Chaiken created the show, she created the character of Jenny as kind of a emulation of her when she was a young writer who moved to LA. And then Bette was supposed to represent her at that time where, you know, she was successful and had her own show and she was trying to balance her love life with her successful career. And we will talk a little bit more about the real life implications of the show as we get a little bit further down in our iceberg. Our next point is to talk about some of the unscripted moments on the show. There are a lot of these kind of famous ones, Bette and Tina and the she-bar kiss. There's the unscripted crying. And then also in the season 2 premiere of the OG, when Bette goes up to Tina in the planet and Tina like flips the table, that was an unscripted moment too.
I told her that you were the love of my life and that I didn't know what I was doing.
I drove by the house at 2 a.m. and your car wasn't there. Did you fuck all night before you told her I was the love of your life this morning?
There are some other little pieces here and there, but there are a lot less unscripted moments than people would think, because as the show continued, like by the time we got to season 5, Jennifer Beals and Laurel Holloman had a bit more input when it came to their characters and how things were written. Like they were able to edit some of the lines and things like that, but when it came to the general storytelling, of course, it always lay with the writers.
Any improv, like, or was it like, it just
Oh,
felt like
no,
some of the stuff felt,
never.
it was all on the page. Was it? It just felt, I guess, well, you guys are all such good actors. Like, it just felt like this could have been a conversation you just whipped up, you know.
There was a lot of great improv.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sometimes we went overboard, and sometimes it went out of control.
Yeah.
Eric could probably talk about improving with Mia. You can too.
Yeah, basically,
As you.
Yeah. But you know what? It keeps you awake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very awake.
Yeah.
Very honest.
But I would venture that it was fabulous and incredible things happened, and probably there was a moment when every single person who had major work to do with Mia came to me crying.
Never came to crying, but
Not quite.
no.
Wait, majority of people
Never cry.
majority. No, I feel like with Mia, I feel like with Mia, you have to be on your game, and anyone who couldn't keep up is going to be upset and feel threatened and be nervous.
Although now, in the case of Generation Q, Jennifer Beals, Leisha Haley, and Kate Manning do have more say when it comes to their characters and what directions they're going in, because of course they are now executive producers. Our final level 3 point does also link into Gen Q, and this was a theory that existed when the original L Word was on, and that was that Bette's mum was alive. And if you go back and look at the original show, there is no actual point where Bette says that her mum is dead. Like, she alludes to it, and she also talks about her mum leaving. But as we've learned from Gen Q, it does not seem like there's any concrete evidence that Bette's mom did pass away. She doesn't know what happened with her mom.
She still alive?
I wouldn't know. She left me.
Well, wouldn't it be amazing if you could reconnect with her?
It wouldn't be amazing.
How do you know?
Same way you know you don't like fucking scallops, Gary. I tried it once and it wasn't for me.
So is this opening the door for a possible Bette's mom reunion on the show? We'll have to stay tuned to Gen Q to find out. Moving into our second to last level of our iceberg, we're going back to that Ilene Chaiken real life point, and that is that Marina and Jenny's story in season 1 is actually based on what happened to Ilene Chaiken when she moved to LA. So when Ilene Chaiken moved to LA and she was trying to get started in writing, and Ilene Chaiken did have an affair with a woman who owned a cafe, and the woman was, a good bit older than her. And I'm sure there's some other real life moments that were inserted into the L Word, including our next point, which is the Lez Girls movie. And a lot of season 5 becomes a bit meta, and there are some discussions about even the cast sexuality in Lez Girls that were very much ripped from the media in the real world, where we have Tina saying to one of the characters about how all of the cast identify as straight except for Gretchen, who was the actress who played Tina, and that was the line that they trotted out throughout the entire run of the L Word, of the original L Word. And they would always say all of the cast identify as straight except for Leisha Haley. And that was what they repeated until Jennifer Beals accidentally outed Kate Manning in an interview with The Advocate. Our final point on this level is the rchart.com fiasco. And rchart.com was exactly what you're thinking it is. It was a real life creation of rchart from the show.
In season 4 of The L Word, Alice Piasecki introduces her latest adventure, ourchart.com.
Oh my god, it's so much fun. You don't know what you're missing. Yeah, no, it's like a social networking site for lesbians. They start logging on and talking about themselves. And
now, life imitates art as Our Chart OurChart.com moves from the TV screen to the computer screen.
It's the first time TV and the internet have sort of come together and acted as a launching pad for social networking sites.
The central motif of our show has always been that interconnectivity among all of us. It makes so much sense to us to now create it on the internet.
So Jennifer Beals, Kate Manning, and Leisha Haley all became founding partners with Ilene Chaiken, who was also the CEO of OurChart.com, and they decided to launch OurChart when season 4 came out of the original L Word. And that's why when you watch season 4, there are literally some commercials for OurChart in the show. So they first pitched OurChart as this kind of 70% user interaction. It would be social media and literally making a chart of, you know, who you've dated or slept with. And there was also the social media element. And then the other 30% was going to be things like interviews with the cast, deleted scenes, exclusive content. Even Leisha's band, Her, was going to put in some exclusive behind the scenes stuff and interviews as well.
An amalgam of all your favorite websites. That's what OurChart is.
We're able to give the people that go onto the site things that they've always wanted to see.
Behind the scenes stuff.
We'll have a blog, an Our Chart blog on a daily basis.
Outtakes from scenes and blooper reels.
The dominant feature of the site will be the networking.
With some bells and whistles added in.
It has music, it has film, photography.
We're also inviting artists from around the world, really.
I'm just really looking forward to being a part of something that's so exciting and that can create community.
I definitely will be on it.
I'm going to be all over the chart.
Yeah, I'll be on it.
I'm going to overexpose myself on OurChart.
It's going to become live sometime in January, right around when we come back on the air, so it all ties in together.
Check out OurChart.com now.
So after it launched in 2006, it rapidly went nowhere. They really didn't deliver on what they said they would. They very quickly lost access, and it seemed as though Leisha, Kate, Rachel Shelley, people like that just weren't interested in giving the content anymore. And also from the social media side, it just really didn't seem like people wanted to put their sex life on the internet for everyone to see. I think that it could have worked if they just focused on the social media element, because as you have to remember, this was 2006, like only Facebook existed, and it was really only still for university students. Then you had to have a university email to have Facebook. So if they focused on the social media element and they still got like the deleted scenes and stuff like that from the cast, then it could have actually worked, because people still want that stuff. One of the biggest things that people say to me when the show is on air is, I wish that we could get, you know, behind the scenes stuff. I wish that we could get deleted scenes.
Yes, we can. Just keep going. So fucked. Sorry, I'll handle him. What are you doing? I don't know. I'm gonna tackle him to the ground. Do you have any mace?
Lady?
Hi. Hi.
I called your office and left a message on some answering machine saying I'd be a little late.
I think you have a mistake.
Oh, sorry. You know, we didn't check our messages this morning.
Do you think maybe you could grab your hand or something?
You're the ones that wanted women's lib, right?
Come on. One more.
Or bloopers and things like that. And I think that one of the reasons a lot of people come to my channel is because I'm able to even show just pictures and like a little bit of discussion about what goes on behind the scenes, because there is that huge gap, because they don't really do anything for the show. I mean, they used to do a little bit more back with the original, but it's still not on par with most other shows. And again, that with the original was before social media, before things are the way they are now.
I will say this, like in all seriousness, like doing love scenes with guys and girls, like I much prefer doing them with girls only because I feel like as women, we so naturally protected each other. If there was a body part that we didn't really want shown or whatever it was.
Talk about that.
Like Kate and I had a whole thing worked out, like what we would cover. I think you and I did a few times.
Yes.
And like,
Erin, you and I.
You know,
that we did that. Who else?
I'll never forget the one time
I've been telling you girls.
And you, and okay, I'm gonna tell the story. I'm gonna tell the story because I just now remembered it and I think it's amazing that Mia actually asked me this. We kissed. No. And after the kiss, she was like, do you think I'm a good kisser?
She asked me the same thing. Oh my God. That's
amazing. No, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I'm like, of course you are. And then she was like, who's better, me or Kate? No, I'm kidding. She didn't know.
That's terrible, because I saw the way I kissed on camera and I was like, this looks dead. I look dead. There's something wrong with the way I kiss. And I was like, what do I do to fix this? Because you are a great on-camera kisser. What? Why?
Jennifer?
What do you do? What do you do?
I commit. You commit, but you also know that you're making a visual picture.
But if they just put a little bit of time, money, and effort into creating an online presence for the show and that marketing side, it would be so fantastic for the show. And I still will never understand why they spend all this time, money, and effort making an entire show and then they don't market it in any capacity, not even just their own, promotion with their Showtime accounts and on their YouTube channel and things. It really doesn't seem to go anywhere. So I really wish that for season 3, they would start doing something a bit more. And I know it's a bit early, but maybe I'm speaking too soon, but they do seem to be taking that advice and putting out, we've even got some pictures and it's only the first week of filming. That's way more than we ever got for the other seasons. So moving into our darkest depths, our level 5 is starting off with a theory from Jennifer Beals herself. And this story was actually told by Ari Mandy because when they were filming season 1 of Gen Q and Jennifer and Ari were filming that scene where Bette talks about Jenny being found in the pool.
I cheated on my ex-wife. Does she know you were unfaithful? Yes, she knows. Anything else? A friend of mine died by suicide on my property. She drowned in my pool. Her name? Jenny Schechter.
Ari said that they were all discussing the original show because Ari is a fan of the original show. And Ari said that Jennifer was explaining to people who hadn't seen the show or weren't super familiar with it. And she was saying that her character of Bette had actually killed Jenny.
All I really care about is that you know that I will not abide anyone who threatens my family.
I do think if anyone was capable of getting away with murder, it would be Bette. But I think we all know that the only person who killed Jenny was in fact Ilene Chaiken, who has admitted to it herself.
We never actually find out who killed Jenny.
What we know for sure is that everybody had a motive, so it's kind of up to viewers to decide who they think had the biggest motive, but we don't get an actual conclusion from the show.
But in a way, it's like everyone was responsible for it, because of course that finale reviewed how everyone may have had a reason to kill her. And actually, Ilene Chaiken had a really interesting take on that ending.
I think it was me. I don't know who else could have done it. None of those girls was a murderer. No, I don't think anybody else killed Jenny. I don't know who did.
And speaking of Jenny, our second to last point is Shane and Jenny was actually championed and pushed as a storyline by Mia Kirshner herself. And last year at a watch party for season 2, Kate did allude to having a complicated relationship with Mia Kirshner, so seems as though there was something else going on behind the scenes there. And finally, a lot of people might not know this, but I'm sure a lot of people have assumed this, and this is how the cast felt about season 6. Most of them have spoken out in, the recent times about how season 6 was just an absolute fiasco and really, really disliked.
I wanted to pretend like the sixth didn't happen and that just capped at 5. Well, it ended at 5. Because the show wasn't about a death. The series that wasn't what this whole show was about.
And even Lucy Lawless did an interview a few years ago where she talked about filming her scenes for the L Word and how when she arrived on set, the entire cast was just so pissed and talking about how they hated the direction of the show and what was happening for season 6.
When Showtime said we were going to do one more season, it's 8 episodes, we decided that we wanted to try to do those 8 episodes as kind of a limited series, and that was a little before everybody was doing limited series. So, we did this murder mystery for the whole 8 episodes. I'm not sure that it was the best choice.
Well, we'll do whatever you need for us to do.
To do a murder mystery maybe was off topic for us, but it was a metaphor. Jenny brought us into this world. Jenny is going to take us out of this world.
Also, there used to be a lot of these watch parties when the original show was on, and it was basically people with a lot of money could pay for the cast to come and watch an episode with them. And most people, like Jennifer Beals, doesn't like to watch herself on screen. It was more, having a discussion with them, having a meal, stuff like that. And there was a couple of people who went to the watch party for the finale, and they said throughout the final episode, the cast were just profusely apologizing for how absolutely awful the last season ended up being. So those were our well-known and lesser-known L Word facts. If there's any big ones, let me know down in the comments, and make sure you're following me on social media to stay up to date with all of the L Word Generation Q Season 3 filming news. And as always, make sure to stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.